everyone, Joe here from ActionX. Welcome to What's in the Tube, where it's our show where we review things in the world of television. Whether it's doing our usual episode-by-episode review of currently on-air shows, or doing these season reviews, which come way after the last season premieres and ends, if that makes any lick of sense. Today we are reviewing Nancy Drew Season 4, aka Nancy Drew, the final season. It has been wrapped up for a few weeks now. I was supposed to review this the week after it ended. But some personal things in my life happened, and I had to delay the review, as well as it gave me more time to really think about it. You know, it's been a very tumultuous 13 weeks as we wrapped up the final chapter in the Drew Crew story, as well as just, of course, obviously dealing with the whole, CW changes and the lack of promotion, really, and then the strike happening, where, this season could not be caught in a very worse bubble. I'm really sad that this season did not get the TLC and the promotion that other shows like The Flash did, for example. I'm also very disappointed the cast couldn't really talk about their thoughts about the show ending and everything. And I do understand, yes, there's a larger, problem over here with the strikes happening, with the main reason they're happening. But yes, writers should be paid fairly, actors should as well. The companies need to shell out the money, which they respectfully earn, which I do agree with them. There is a bigger problem and bigger issue that needs to be solved. So I do understand that, some shows either getting canceled or, in this case, not properly having a full, complete, satisfying ending with, all parties involved. I do understand those are the little sacrifices that need to be played here. It's just, again, I'm allowed to say it's unfortunate Nancy Drew had to be caught in that after effect, so to speak, right now. But, however, just in general, with the last 13 weeks of the show in the history, I don't imagine it coming back for season 5 or, doing a revival run. I will imagine you will see a Nancy Drew again someday. A new iteration, whether it's another direct-to-video movie, another show, maybe even a movie, who knows? But I frankly do believe we will see the character again, but this is the end of the Drewniverse, as we know, the 4 seasons of Nancy Drew and the 1 season of Tom Swift from last year, so this all wrapped up the journey. Which actually goes into my perfect statement of, what is the season like in a basically in a non-spoiler fashion, bare bones, one line only. Where does it stand on the rest of the series, as well as, how does it fare up being, not only does it have to be the 4th season, aka, for majority of shows, it's a new beginning, where, the Drew Crew is pushed into this new avenue of life, new challenges, new, destinations for their journeys, as well as this being the final season. There is just so much on the table here that, were they even going to, figure this all out? Were they able to, line the ship up, and even with a lot of behind the scenes issues and everything, just the lack of communication with the new head honchos and the team behind Nancy Drew. I think personally they managed to not only do another great season of Nancy Drew, but at the same time they were able to perform a pretty good ending. This is not a perfect ending. Let's just be flat out there. From what I was aware of, they only were notified about this as being the last season, I believe, when they were breaking down the 11th episode. So that means their last 2 episodes not only had to be the season finale, the end of the season episode, they also had to be the end of the series episode. Which, honestly, mind you, a lot of the elements in season 4 already were we're pushing to new direction, but at the same time, if for any instance we weren't going to be able to see where those new directions could lead our characters, it would honestly work out, to say the least, that, okay, at least we have at least good enough ending to these characters that it works out for the long road. So I gotta give major kudos. I also kind of okay, really CW, you couldn't really just send an email saying that, hey, we're not reviewing you for a 5th season, so wrap it up now. I'm like, really? And the only reason why they found that is because Kennedy McMahon, who plays Nancy Drew throughout the entire show, was courted to do a spin-off to The Good Doctor, which has not yet been picked up yet, but I have said before in previous comments that if that show does get picked up in the series, we will review it. We will follow Kennedy's next chapter, should that be the direction that her career will go. Obviously, with the strike and everything, they're not really even thinking about picking up that many new shows, considering the fact a lot of their current show can't even begin production. So, again, it's one of those, please, for every freaking studio head in the planet, pay your writers and actors fairly, because we are waiting for the new content. We are waiting. # bring back Ricky. But yeah, so So they were trying to figure out the logistics schedule because, like, Nancy Drew was going to be filmed a bit differently with how season 4 was, considering the fact it was never going to be anymore a fall, schedule show anymore. It was going to be like whatever the fuck they wanted to fit it in. So I'm like, okay, we can be a little bit loose with the schedule now. So maybe that can give Kennedy enough time to like do a strict fall schedule and then do a, the loose Nancy Drew schedule. But they're like, now we're going to cancel the show. It's fine. We're not coming back for more. And I'm like, that's kind of a really fucked up way. That really is. Because like, for a lot of cast and crew, at least they were expecting, okay, maybe we can go for a season 5. Because that's traditionally how a good amount of CW shows go through. They get to season 5, and then they wrap up the show. That's a pretty good number, 100 episodes, and they wrap up for syndication. But no, they didn't even get that far, which I'm like, again, very, very disappointed, mind you. But overall speaking, like, just to... That's why season 4 at its core, it's a really good season. It really is. I think they once again did something new. They brought something different to the table. Continue to expand the mythos of Horseshoe Bay, but not quite a lot. They don't overstuff the face with, like, we get so many new elements, and thankfully we don't get a slew of new characters. I mean, at least I don't think so. I feel like the ratio of like getting new characters in a 4th season, as well as setting up new stories, new villain ideas, like everything feels in line with how Nancy Drew has been. But this felt like a natural evolution to like the first 3 seasons were kind of like very much its own book. And I know this was supposed to start another book per se, but it ended up not happening like that. So mind you that again, story's great, characters once again. The actors were able to not only, continue their stories correctly, but able to push the envelope of like how far are these characters willing to go in this kind of new stage of their life. And, I found that all very impressive. A shout out to the entire cast for pulling it off. A bit wonky. This you definitely felt the budget decreasing this season, with just the very much the switcheroos, some of the episodes being like very weird and like. That's not a criticism, but like it was very much felt. It very much felt. I'm very scared to what future CW seasons have in store, considering the fact that it is a major requirement going forward with the CW, that you have to have massive budget cuts, which I'm like, that is a little bit scary. It's a little bit scary, but thankfully Nancy Drew was able to, work with what they got and tell a really good story, continuing the mythos, and also finding a way to like, tie it all back into the beginning, and also trying to like, wrap up the story. All great, and well. With that being said, when it comes to these season reviews, we're not spoiling anything beyond the season premiere. So even if you don't want to be spoiled on the first episode, this is the point where you turn away. Honestly, I would highly recommend it. If you're a Nancy Drew fan, you absolutely need to watch this last season. If you are a casual fan that has been watching Nancy Drew, again, it's worth, wrapping up the ship, wrapping up the story pretty neatly. And yeah, that's all I can really say about that. So going into like, honestly, the more specifications of the season without spoiling too much of it. The story overall, the premise, it as much as it is a really good, strong story, it does take a little bit to get into. They not only have to juggle between setting up the new storyline, but as well as, kind of, bringing this fresh new beginning to the Drew crew, where like everyone's in new stages of their life, but they're still trying to keep the ship together, still trying to keep this whole core crew together, this little family they cultivated for nearly a year together. They've been trying, and it's very, very difficult, because in the fact all of them are kind of exploring different directions, different avenues, and it gets a little bit scary with the fact, they're growing up, like they're in their 20s, and some of them are beginning their 20s, and they're just trying to figure out, where do I belong in the world? Where do I need to go next? Where does my next step take me? And especially when you have to solve mysteries around town, like, just in general, like, trying to get this all figured out, like, also a little bit of a, like, sample, you did feel the stretch marks, with the whole, like, we're only in one town throughout the entire show. So, like, there's only so much of the mythos you can keep adding on that feels organic. I felt like another thing is, like, this felt like the perfect opportunity to, like, wrap it all up, because it felt like even they were stretching a little bit with this, storyline, with this, new set of mythos they were adding up to, because like it kept constantly adding more and more to the past, and they can still do so. It's easy, like, 200 years before the last issue, this was the thing, and now it's coming back conveniently for the Drew crew to handle it. So, mind you, that's just my opinion on the subject, as well as you have the other storylines that were hanging over from season 3. You have Ryan's deal with the glasses, aka the Relic Hunters from the end of season 3. They're kind of like, hey, kind of owe us something, and they're like, okay, here we go. Well, what, it was going to be great to have some human antagonists again. And then you had obviously Tempest's curse looming around Nancy and Ace, where like the Nace community apparently was like very excited at the end of season 3, and then figuring out it was all a mirage. It was all like, nope, it's just a big old joke. Nothing happened, and it can never happen. And now you're like, you got to do it a whole season of like, where do they lead? Where were they going to go from here? And honestly, like, just the way they paced everything was really well done. Some things like, definitely this felt one of those like, the main core story. It thankfully did not overextend its welcome. They did the whole usual, like, they evolved it. We're like, it's not like, one constant, like, here's the set mystery. We're going to have it from episode 1 to the last episode. No, they evolve it. They keep it going. They keep making it more better, adding more to the pod, making it all organic. It's still a little confusing because, like, my brain's like not the best, to be honest with you. When it comes to like keep tracking every little thing about mysteries, even though I love mysteries. It still was a really good way to like expand the lore, get new creatures involved. There wasn't really too much 100% with you. There was more like paranormal. I keep forgetting there's a difference between paranormal and supernatural. I keep forgetting. There's more emphasis on ghostly entities than there is on monsters, which we kind of delved a little bit more into this season about that. So that was something that I was like very, very excited about. They did take some creative risks this season, definitely them like, trying to do different things, different experiments, and most of them worked out pretty well. So to speak. Again, when you're doing experimental stuff in the 4th season of your show, it's going to hit and then sometimes it's going to miss, so you're going to have to take those out. I feel like they got more hits often than misses, so I was very happy about that, that they didn't like, water down the last season with like, oh, we're going to try this out, or we're going to try that out. And I'm like, okay, you know what? Granted, thankfully, the writers know what they're doing. They told a very fascinating, those episodes when they were, as well as trying to feed into the larger narrative, like, the stories they were like trying to set up so far with our characters, and segueing that in perfectly with our main cast for the last time. I feel like everyone got a little bit of something to do, a little bit. I felt like this was the more balanced season, and I'm very hopeful that I was very hopeful that like they did so, because like I got scared like, are they really gonna have the whole ensemble curse where like even in the last season was one character, one actress was not gonna get enough material just because they don't have time to. Thankfully it worked. Everything worked out correctly. Everyone had a major storyline. Everyone had a major direction to face in. And I was very, very happy about that. Obviously, Carson and Ryan, being kind of like de facto leads, were like, they're part of the main cast, but they're not like, part of the main cast, where like they're still around, but they're not around in every episode. Both of them still had their own different, in terms of like going beyond Nancy, where like, Nancy kind of established her independence at the end of last season, where like, they're still their dads, like, they're still going to be around for her, but like, they're not really as needed anymore in the fatherly advice category, Carson's more interested in like, dating and like actually progressing further with his life beyond Nancy and his ex-wife and his deceased wife, and Ryan's still trying to find his place in the world, that like he like not relating to the Hudson name anymore, just being Ryan. What does he have to do? What is his purpose in life? And honestly, I was very satisfied to see those characters like finding things to do, finding their next direction. It felt like a little bit like kind of like, okay, it's kind of fillery, where like they kind of like shoot in like a random thing that was related to the Nancy Drew universe, where like Carson is going to do this thing and Ryan's going to do this thing, where I'm like, okay, it's interesting, mind you. We don't really get too much development on those fronts. It was more like once they introduce the title, we kind of like, go into it like right away without much explanation, which again can work sometimes. Sometimes you just gotta throw yourself into something and then like just hope it sticks. But at other times it's like, well, they could have like expanded on that a little bit more. So, but again, it's just the nitpicking nature that I am as a person right now. But going to our core cast, starting with Bess. Last we wrapped up with her. She's now the new caretaker of the historic society. Obviously, her being more of like, a modern age, person. Her goal this season, like how to bring the historic society to the modern day, actually trying to like, continue its teachings and continue its findings. But at the same time, like, how does she, put her own spin on, how does she put her own thing on it? Because again, like her whole spiel in the first 2 seasons were like trying to be a, what was it? It was a Marvin. And then that had to like that got self-destructed in season 2. And season 3, she was still trying to find her place, especially trying to like delve more into the books and the lore of the town, and like knowing more about the magical side of the world. And definitely that's her place this season, as she's trying to like figure all this stuff out, as well as coming into her own challenges, her own battles, and like, her kind of having to like be her own person, coming to her own, because like it just felt like she was relying on too many people throughout the series. This was kind of like her move to like, I need to be more independent. I need to be more, unified. I need to be my own self. And I think they, definitely wrote that out to a T with that one. Her just like being more confident than normal, like her being able to do her own things and trying to figure all that out. Going into George, where again, last season, George decided to follow a career as being a lawyer, Carson being her mentor, and then her kind of like actually thinking about a proper higher future than she ever thought of before. And as much as that scares her, she's always ready for the challenge. Obviously, her lingering relationship from Nick is prevalent, but it's not over. It doesn't overstay its welcome. They do have a very tight, thankfully organic and natural resolution to their story, and I'm very happy about that. I was very happy that they were able to like wrap it all up for them, and I was actually very kudos to the team for like actually doing so, because like it was honestly just like, okay, where do we go for here with these guys, because they're still part of the same crew, but like how do you deal with that post breakup? And it's very difficult sometimes, because then you get the fans like Friends, when Ross and Rachel like broke up and they had seasons where they were apart, but it was good they still had feelings for each other. Like how do you keep that momentum going without like retreading like them being on again, off again? And I think they did a very organic thing, because that is part of George's character this season, about not having to be too overly reliant on Nick, because that's kind of like what her character was since I guess the first half of season 1. She's always been independent, but at the same time she's always had like Nick in a way to like always support her for any reason. And that this season definitely had to teach her of like being able to become her own woman and actually become much more, even more self-sufficient than she ever was, even when we first saw her back in season 1. And as for Nick, it's the same thing where like he's just trying to find his place, where like Nick was kind of like this rich-ish business Mongo in the last 2 seasons, where like this season he's kind of like well, Horseshoe Bay is great, but I don't want to stay stuck in one town. Like I feel like I want to explore and see what else is there to do, really. And definitely he has a lot on his plate to handle with, because he has a lot of responsibilities, a lot of lingering things from last season to still handle with. But at the end of the day, he's still trying to figure out himself. Where is his place in the world? Like that isn't catering to like helping out someone. As much as he loves helping people, it just feels like he's helping out to a larger cause instead of something that like he wants to do on his own, if that makes really much sense. But I do appreciate that in his journey, and I feel like he had much more of the comedic moments this season, in my opinion, about it. And usually that goes to best, but like this season, I felt like there was more Nick than I was expecting. And then going into Ace, where I'm like, Ace, my boy, like trying to get his woman, trying to get the woman of his dream, and like like a stupid freaking curse prevents it, from kissing, from boning, from anything. Like just damn, like even though they touch each other, like glass breaks, and it's like they want to do it so bad, and like obviously they're just Nancy and Ace's relationship this season was like very much like, it was done really well. I will say there are some moments where like, I kind of rolled my eyes, where like, yeah, I know you're trying to pad this out a little bit, trying to get us to the end of the season, hoping to do something different than the next. But what I will say is that it literally is, their relationship this season is the definition of a roller coaster. That they were definitely just all over the motions, mind you. And I think Ace has more of the stronger character moments this season, outside of Nancy, where like where he's placed in a lot of, lonely environments, let's say that much. So it's a lot of the actor actually playing through his keys and like, playing off different actors or actresses, or like a limited set, which kind of can feel sad at times, but at the same time, it kind of gives Ace much more development, where like the theme of this season is self-sufficient. It's like trying to be your own person, not having to rely on others, and trying to like, figure out, how do I manage this that isn't like me overstaying to someone else's company. And I think that especially worked out with Ace this season, where like he was just firing all cylinders. I think every scene he was in, like was really, really great in my opinion. So shout out to the actor. And finally, our woman, Nancy Drew, last season as the lead, last season ever, and I think she did a really great job as always. When it comes to just in her life, like she's had so many like freaking ups and turns, freaking changes and everything. It's like, what more can they throw at her next? What's the next freaking thing to like throw a wrench in the plans? And Nancy now finally becoming a full investigator, becoming her own woman, like running her own company, running her own like business practice. It's it's scary. It's like definitely a amalgamation of like how life is. Where like as soon as you become an adult, you're thrown out to the world. Like there's no support system. There's no helping. Like you're on your own, and like some days it's like gonna be harder than the last, and like kind of have to keep going forward, mind you. And Nancy, I think, stays the most level-headed this season as well, despite everything that gets thrown her way between Ace, the new mystery, even just some other new characters that come in her way, and she kind of is still stay resilient of it. She doesn't like overstay anything. She doesn't always thinking one step ahead, always thinking about the right thing to do, and that still falls in line with her character. But as well as willing to take a little bit of extra risk because like this is a new place in her life, this is a new position, and sometimes you have to keep yourself open to that, keeping yourself open to there could be something else on the horizon for you to do, and this is being like the swan song for Nancy Drew. It's like definitely it was perfectly compassed for not just her but every character in the show. But last but not least, just like to say it off, I thought that they did a really good job this season. In all honesty, with just everything they've done with the thematics, every episode kind of like was crafted uniquely different. My only nitpicks, besides the one I mentioned before, is the villains this season. It's not really much of a villain. It's a different approach to a antagonistic force, let's say that. But it wasn't really what you're expecting, which sometimes that can be like a great thing. That means you can get something better out of it. Or sometimes you kind of like, well, I would have preferred this other way, which would have been more classic and kind of been more well done, but it would have been more consistent. So sometimes you have to take those big swings. Sometimes you miss. Sometimes you partially miss. You never really know. But I do give them kudos for actually, wrapping it all up, I actually giving the characters a really good, interesting dilemma for them to do. It's something different from the previous three seasons. And I do like it a lot. I really did. It was just like, well, this part could have been better, or this could have been done a little bit differently, mind you. So that's just my opinion about it, all honesty. But for now, this being the end of the Drewniverse and everything else, just to get my final say on it, this, I think Nancy Drew once again delivers another great season. This is a really good, well done final season, despite the limited time they knew about that information. And honestly, like it leaves you like satisfied, but like you hope that these characters will do the best they can wherever they line up after the show ends, and as much as we would love to see where they would go next, what is going to be the next storyline, like as much as we like all that, it's just in the general notion of like sometimes you just got to leave it open, like leave the blank canvas for like maybe let their dreams run a while and like figure out what is next for them, because sometimes the world is much bigger than just Horseshoe Bay. But with that being said, I give the final season of Nancy Drew 2 thumbs up. Highly recommend it for anyone who has yet to check it out. You can go check out the entire final season on thecw.com. It will soon be available on Mac towards the end of September. So stay tuned for that. If you want to wait to it, I imagine there'll be a home media release at some point. I would buy them, but they're freaking expensive. But yeah, let me know in the comments below what you think of the final season of Nancy Drew. I would love to hear your comments down below, as always. But I believe that's going to do it for me today, everyone. So if you're unaware, this has been Was It 2 from ActionX, reviewing the final season of Nancy Drew in a non-spoiler capacity. If you want to know what we're doing normally, what's to do besides our Nancy Drew episode reviews. Right now, we are only doing Heels reviews each and every week after brand episodes on their respective platforms. But if you don't care about Nancy Drew, sadly, to say the least, this is the final time, the final new thing to kind of review ever. Again, I do have high hopes. Maybe we could see these characters again, but I'm not holding my breath. But what I will say is that, I was very happy to like be a part of the Drewniverse, to be here and like to actually witness these characters grow up and evolve and everything. And I'm very happy that this was the first show I reviewed on What's the Tube, episode by episode, in terms of like new show. And the fact that it's over, the fact that 4 years have passed by is crazy. This was pre-pandemic, and now we're ways away from like the post-pandemic status. I'm like, damn, it's just how much time has passed. But with that being said, again, I'm gonna miss these characters. I'm gonna miss this cast. I'm gonna miss this team. Hopefully they'll all do greater things down the horizon in their careers once the strike eventually ends, and they can be able to pursue full good careers. Hopefully Kennedy gets that spinoff, and hopefully we'll get to see more of her in the future. I still have a feeling Kennedy has a much bigger destiny in Hollywood, and I can't wait to see what she's going to do next, especially with all the cast. Leah Lewis was in Elemental, which you can go check out. I haven't seen that movie yet, but it's on the list. I have a lot of things on my watch roster, and of course I have no doubt that the other three the characters, the cast from the Drew crew will also do well. So I have faith in that. Again, let me know in the comments below what you think of the final season of Nancy Drew. I would love to have the conversation with you down below. We will return to Nancy Drew in some capacity on this show in the future, doing definitive reviews for the other 3 seasons we have yet to do after season 1. So our time with Nancy Drew isn't fully over yet, but like it's going to be a long time. Obviously to get more like a semblance of like we will return. We will return in some form or function. But in terms of like the current storyline, this is over. This is the end. But again, thank you so much for all the Drew crew members out there who have been supporting me for so many years. I love you all. Thank you very, very much. I would not be here without you. So thank you. I really appreciate it. And hopefully you get to check out our other works on What's the Tube. You can maybe see us on our other content lineups. But if this is the end, thank you so much for joining me in these last 4 years. I'm going to miss y'all. Hopefully we'll see each other down the road, hopefully. But for now, stay safe out there. Be good to each other. And as always, peace out.